You know what? Somebody ever tells you the horse bucks, you might want to believe them. Could one of you please go get me a ladder? I'd really like to get down from this tree.
Well, good day and welcome back. And oh, by the way, I didn't need any help getting down out of that tree. We just kind of fell. It was okay. We didn't need the ladder, which was good because I don't know where it was anyhow. But since we were on the subject, and I actually mentioned it in one of my last videos, and we'll talk about bucking. And I have these two horses in here for a reason, because, well, they both at some point kind of contribute to this message. Now, I know I'm going to leave out a lot of things, so if I forget something, don't get too excited, because it's a topic that I could probably talk about for days and still forget stuff. Yeah, he's doing it again. Well, he's got these guys, both of these, always got to be between me and the camera. Like, gee whiz. You ever had a horse compete with you? Kind of annoying. Anyhow, I want to talk a little bit about bucking. Some of the causes, some of the ways you can prevent it, and how horses learn it, why they do it. It's a really complex topic, actually. It's not quite as simple as a lot of people think it is. See, part of the bucking is a horse's natural instinct for survival. So every horse has the propensity to buck. It's there. They're born with it. It's how they get a predator off their back, by bucking. And sometimes that's how they view a human, depending on how things are done. And preventing problems is so much easier than trying to solve them once they occur. I've mentioned this before, and well, it's one of the reasons I like to do fairly extensive groundwork. Now, this guy being a bit of a subject of that is because I've just started riding him recently. Well, I've taken a little bit of an intermission from that because of a hoof issue that doesn't seem to bother him, but we're not going to. Anyhow, in the process of getting him ready to be ridden so that we won't have any bucking, we did an awful lot of stuff with him just to get him used to this, that, and the other thing, and, we really took our time. Go slow. Get him used to weight on his back, and that started with, having him stand at the mounting block, and I just press on his back with my hands. We elevated it to, it went up in stages long before we got on, so that by the time I got on, my 200 pounds of extra weight on his back was not a big deal, and there was no risk of bucking. I actually give some demonstrations on how to go about that in my training videos. And I'll just summarize. One of the things that I do is I actually, I use a horse trailer, but you could use a fence or the rails in your round pen or whatever. You hang on firmly with one hand, have your horse hold the lead in the other hand, have your horse stand in front of you, and then you just slip one leg over the horse, a little bit at a time. Each day you lower yourself a little more onto the horse, always hanging on to something. That way if the horse does get worried and scoots out from underneath you, well, you're still right where you were. You're not dependent on the horse to support your weight. You're hanging on to something. And that's one of the things that you need to do. But anyhow, we gradually worked our way up, doing a whole bunch of different things. So the day that I actually got on him, no big deal. And he could care less whether or not I'm on him now. Now, the other one there, though, another story, due to a history of bucking, well, that's one of the reasons she ended up with me. And her original owner, rode her for a while, and then all of a sudden she took to bucking and scared the heck out of her. And, well, I don't blame her. Not everybody wants to be a bronc rider, and I'm not too sure I'd want to ride a horse that's prone to bucking either. It would certainly rattle my confidence a little. So she was scared to ride the horse anymore, and, sold it, and then very rapidly changed hands a few times and eventually ended up with me. And when I got her, one of the biggest problems that she had was she was a very worried horse. Now this goes back to the instincts, why horses buck. One of the number one causes of bucking is a worried horse, because they quite literally are fearing for their life. Their instincts kick in. for self-preservation. They want to get that predator off their back. So if she's a little bit worried and you try riding her, well, there's a chance she might start bucking. Well, I discovered she was pretty worried when I got her, and we worked on that. Not very worried anymore. But we still don't ride her now, but that's for another reason, because there was another factor in there. She not only was a very worried horse, but she also has some physical issues, which actually took us a while to figure out, and we decided that, well, probably best not to even bother riding her, although we've gotten her over this worried stuff enough that in spite of the physical discomfort, I probably could ride her. She'd probably let me, but I don't really want to cause her any more discomfort, so I'm not going to. Now, those two kind of go together because, well, she was already worried, and then she had some discomfort on top of that. Well, she figured that was caused by this person on her back, so she took to bucking. It was the only thing she knew how to do to get the message across that, hey, I don't want this extra weight on my back because, well, I'm in pain here. And if you're already pretty worried, that put her over the edge in a hurry. Well, I've dealt with the worried part, so I don't think it'd put her over the edge if I did ride her. But like I said, I don't want to hurt her, so I'm not going to ride her. Because, well, maybe she would buck. I don't think so, though. But I've never actually addressed the bucking problem because it's usually caused by something that can be dealt with other than the old school method of bucking out a horse, which is I talked about in my How Fast Do You Go video. And a lot of people still think that's how you fix a bucking horse, is you got to get somebody that can really stick on the horse good, and they ride it until it stops bucking to solve the bucking problem, because then it realizes that the bucking doesn't do any good because that person on their back doesn't go away. Well, that's okay if you can find somebody that can really stick it out and hang on and has good seat and good balance, young and athletic. Well, that leaves me out. What do I do? Well, I got to find other ways of dealing with things. And that goes back to figuring out why is the horse bucking in the first place. Like I said, it's part of their instinct. And if you go too quickly in the beginning, there's a much greater chance that horse is still going to be a little on the worried side when you ride it for the first time, and it might take to bucking. And if you do your groundwork quite thoroughly, the odds of that happening are pretty slim. Although it can still happen no matter how good you are. And I watched a video not long ago about that a guy did, and he, man, 10 times the horseman I am. And he did a little video that included a clip of when he was starting a horse and it bucked. And he says, hey, no matter how good you are and how thorough you are, there's always that risk that 1 in 100 might buck. So it can still happen, but if you rush things and the horse is still worried when you ride it the first time, well, those odds go up pretty quick. Another thing that happens, too, that can contribute to bucking, and, well, there's a couple things, but, and most of them, we cause them. Things that we do is a lot of people, when they're first starting a horse, they like to actually do the first ride bareback because they figure it's more comfortable. They don't have the saddle freaking the horse out and everything else, so it's better. Well, I think if you do your groundwork properly in advance and that saddle has been on the horse enough times already, having that saddle on is probably not going to be a problem or a contributing factor. The downside to starting a horse bareback, and I discourage people from doing it for this very reason, is if the horse is a little bit concerned and takes to bucking, well, you're probably going to come off because you got nothing to hang on to. You know, even if you're pretty darn good, you really got nothing to hang on to. So if the horse takes to bucking, you're coming off, and the horse in turn learns that it can get rid of the rider by bucking. So the next time you get on, there's a good chance that horse is going to do it again, and if it does it a couple of times, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to keep on doing it because you started bareback. Whereas if you do it with a saddle the first time you get on, if the horse does get a little bit worried, which hopefully it won't if you do things right, but it can, and if it does get a little bit worried and starts to bucking, well, at least you got a seat, you got a horn to hang on to, or the front of the saddle, whatever, depending on the type of saddle. And there's a much better chance that you're actually going to stay on that horse. One of the reasons I actually prefer a Western saddle too is they're just a little more secure to keep you on the horse better in case the horse spooks and jumps sideways or whatever. But that's one of the reasons when you do the first ride, you really want to use a saddle because it's less chance that you're going to come off and less chance that that horse is going to learn to get rid of a rider by bucking. And that way you aren't going to teach the horse to buck because that can happen. I want to talk about some other things too. Sure, they're not going to come over here when I need them, but that's okay. I've talked about this stuff in other videos too. I talked about the importance of saddle fit. That's another one of those things that contributes to bucking too, is poor fitting the saddle. It can pinch them in the shoulders. It can cause all kinds of discomfort if it doesn't fit properly. Now, if you got a pretty tolerant horse, you may be able to ride that thing for years and never have a problem because it just doesn't care. But if you got a pretty sensitive horse and you try riding it in a saddle that doesn't fit well, it might have something to say about that because it very quickly figures out that, okay, as soon as you put that saddle on and then you put your big butt in that seat, my back hurts. It's your fault. I'm getting rid of you. And the horse takes to bucking. So that can happen. But unfortunately, a lot of people will kind of go to immediately there's a physical issue. And that is a very common go-to thing. The minute the horse starts bucking or misbehaving, it's a physical issue. Well, sometimes it is, and I don't want you to overlook that. But don't think that automatically if the horse does something silly that it's a physical issue because that probably only applies maybe 10% of the time or less even. Most of the time it's actually something else happening. Now, the physical issue could be things like, well, maybe the way you treat the horse when you're riding it. Do you yank a little too hard on that bit? Do you have a saddle that doesn't fit well? Are you a little heavy with the spurs? All these things can contribute to a horse wanting to get rid of its rider, which leads to the bucking. Other times it can be, like I said, maybe something, you got a sore shoulder, a sore foot, well, in the case of this one, she's got 4 sore feet. And the extra weight of a rider, she goes, don't want it. Okay. Well, maybe now she'd put up with it, but we don't want to take that chance. But like I said, the go-to thing, a lot of people think, hey, we got to call in a vet. We got to call in a chiropractor, massage therapist, that animal communicator. Well, I don't know, pick one, whatever. I don't know what people use. I don't use any of them. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. I do use a vet. But you can end up spending an awful lot of money on a problem that, well, you're not going to solve with that money, and it could end up costing you thousands of dollars. And in fact, it's a behavioral issue caused by worry, because that is the number one reason that a horse bucks is it's just plain and simple worried about things. And it bucks basically because it fears for its life, and it is trying to get rid of that predator on its back. That's a survival mechanism. That's what horses do. And like I said, sometimes we teach them to buck. If they manage to successfully get rid of their rider once or twice, chances are they're going to do it again. And well, then you got to back up and figure out why are they trying to get rid of the rider in the first place? Is there a physical issue with the horse? Are you not treating the horse well? In the case of a first ride, is it just plain worried and you're going too quick? There's a lot of reasons. And, like I said, don't overlook the physical ones. I mean, like this one here, I was still not convinced that it was something other than behavioral. And it definitely was a behavioral factor, but turns out after some closer investigation, there actually is a physical factor as well with this one. That one there, well, he's physically fine. But, we didn't want him getting worried, so we went nice and slow when we first started working with him and when we first started riding him. So now when we get on him, man, he's about if he was any better, a beginner could have taken him for his first ride. I'm telling you. But those are some of the reasons that horses buck, some of the reasons, some of the ways you can prevent it. How to fix it, well, that's another story. It depends on why the horse is bucking. So, don't immediately run out start spending thousands of dollars every time a horse bucks. Back up a little and start thinking like a horse and put yourself in the horse's place and figure out, why is that horse bucking? Got to be a reason. They don't just buck for no darn reason. If they buck, they probably got a reason, and the reason might be simply you just taught them to, and they really don't have a lot of good reason behind it, other than the fact that at one point you did something that encouraged the horse to buck, and when it bucked, you came off and thought, oh, that's easy. All I got to do is buck and get rid of the rider. Because if the horse had the choice, it would rather be out in the pasture just hanging out with other horses eating grass. So it wouldn't take a whole lot to teach a horse to buck. It's part of their natural instinct to do so. So if you encouraged it in any way, shape, or form, you could end up with a bucking horse on your hands in a heck of a hurry. And well, I don't know about you, but most people that I know, and myself included, I don't want to ride a bucking horse. So anyhow, I'm sure there's lots of stuff I've left out. And you're going to be going, well, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about that. Well, you know, it's not something that I did a great deal of research on before I put this video on. Well, I didn't put it together at all. This is just, I'm just winging it. But, you know, biggest thing is, why is the horse bucking? Back it up a little, you know, think about what's happened that has taught that horse that it was a good idea to buck, because they generally don't do anything for no reason. They've always got a reason for anything they do, and bucking being one of them. As you can see, this worried horse ain't so worried anymore, and I probably could ride her, but well, I'm going to err on the side of caution and not ride her, and she's not the only horse I got anyhow, and she's got a lot of other good qualities anyhow, so even if she doesn't want to be ridden, that's all right. Not a big deal. Yeah. She doesn't have to be ridden. And, well, I've said that before, too. You don't always have to ride a horse to enjoy it. There's more to horses, and the more I get to know them, the less I care if I ride. There's a whole lot more to horses than just riding, but if you do plan on riding them, you don't want them bucking, so prevent it. And if they do take a bucking, well, figure out why they're doing it before you jump to conclusions. Might be something completely different than what you think about. Have a good day.